So if we think of QuickBooks in terms of tracking our money in and our money out, let's take a look at what that looks like in terms of forms and how we actually enter that data. So let's just say we own a lemonade stand, and we've been outside all day just collecting cash from the drivers that drive by, and at the beginning of the next day we're going to make a deposit. A great place for newbies to begin to learn QuickBooks is by using this home screen. And the home screen is great because it shows you a bit of a workflow. And the home screen, you can see, is divided into money out, which is our vendors section, our customer section, which is our money in section, employees that we have. We've got a section down here to handle employees. That's not something we'll talk about in this just overview here. And then the company section here is really the back end of QuickBooks, if you will. It's kind of how we set up our QuickBooks to work for us. And then the banking section allows us to do things like record deposits and enter credit card charges, write checks. Those are some of the things we're going to look at. So let's, again, looking at the money in portion, how are we going to enter money in? Well, lemonade stand, we've collected a bunch of money that we're going to deposit the next day. We're not creating customer invoices. We don't even know the names of a lot of the people that stopped by to give us money. So we can simply come right to this section here and click on record deposits. I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't want to get into that payment section. But it takes us to a screen called Make Deposits. So this is a form. This is a form in QuickBooks that allows us to book a debit and a credit accounting transaction. But luckily we don't need to know which is the debit and which is the credit because that's all handled for us by use of this form. So we go through the questions here. We're going to deposit this to checking, and I could change that, say if I were depositing it into savings, for example. And there's ways to set that as your default account. I love to tab between fields, so we can tab to the date and make sure that we have the right date. And then the other pieces of information that you need on this form is the from account. The from account is going to be our income account. If I click on my little upside down triangle, I could find my income accounts, and it's just going to be something like, we'll call it retail sales. And then let's say we're taking to the bank $132.28 or whatever the case may be. I could fill in payment method if I like. That's just informational. We could say it's a cash payment. For this example, I'm going to leave the rest of these fields blank, but this gives you an overview of what the form looks like. In this case, our credit is the retail sales. Again, you don't need to know that. You just need to know that this is an income account, very typically. And then our debit here is the checking account. And if we save this, I want to show you what it looks like. Then if we go to our profit and loss report and drill down on retail sales, we can see the deposit that we just made here for $132.28. So it shows up on our profit and loss report as income. Again, it's part of this here for $132.28. And then if we look at our balance sheet, which I think I still have open, and on our checking, we're going to see a debit for that amount. Down here at the bottom, we can see the debit for $132.28. So you can see how from that example, how it flowed through to one of those, and in this case, both of those reports that we were talking about. So I wanted to show you something else on this form. We'll go back to this form here because I want to talk about lists. All of these triangles represent lists. In this case, we have a list of deposit accounts that we can choose from. And where does this list come from? This is our chart of accounts. These are the accounts that show up on our balance sheet. So they're balance sheet accounts. And if we go to list, chart of accounts, you're going to see those accounts right here: PayPal, checking, cash expenditures, savings. And that's what you see here. Okay, so these mimic each other. Another item here, from account, you Usually this is going to be an income account because it's a deposit form, but it may not necessarily be an income account. But in this case, we would select our retail sales income account, and again, it shows up on your chart of accounts in the income section of these accounts. Let's see. The received from would typically be a customer if we wanted to fill that in, and that's another list in QuickBooks. And we can look at our customer list by going to Customer, Customer Center, and here's a list of our customers. And by the same token, we have a vendor, Vendor Center, and we have a vendor list as well. So now we've talked about our income statement, our balance sheet, our accounts receivable report, our accounts payable, forms and lists, and let's look at another way to track our income. So I'm going to take you back to the home screen. We went straight here to record deposits, to record that income, and I gave you the example of a lemonade stand where you're not going to be tracking the names of your customers usually. But we could have worked our way backwards here. You see receive payment and create invoice. So maybe we want this workflow. We do want to create invoices, and then we want to receive payments, and we want to take those payments to the bank. So this tutorial is not meant to be an example of how to create invoices and receive payments, because we're going to do that in another session. But I want to show you just an example of the form. So if I click on invoice, here's another form in QuickBooks, and again, it might mimic handwritten forms that you might buy at Staples. So for your invoice, you're going to have a list here you can choose from to select your customer. You're going to have a list to select your item code, and your item code might be, if this go back to a lemonade stand, and let's say we do enter invoices, your item code might be 16-ounce lemonade cup. And then the amount would be pre-filled typically, but we can always overwrite that as well. But I just wanted to give you an example of what another form may look like. And then once we create that invoice, we would want to follow this workflow and receive a payment on that invoice, and then take that payment to record the deposit. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the income side, and we really have touched upon the most typical ways that you're going to be entering money in that your business receives. You're either going to be going straight to record deposits, or you'll create an invoice, receive a payment, and then take those payments as part of the deposits to take to the bank.